Hi, my name is Dr. Denise, and this is this week's A Dose from Dr. Denise, where I hope to teach, show, and inspire you how to release your God-given health and life potential. I hope you turned your clocks back. Happy Sunday. It's a rainy day here in Southeast Texas, a pretty day, so you might hear rain pitter-patter. I'm sitting outside and I have an aluminum overhang, so you might be hearing that in the background. So I have a really cool topic today. I have lots of notes on it, so hopefully it comes out clearly. But I want to talk about the difference between when we're operating out of ego versus operating out of spirit. And then I'm going to give you a good example of something that happened to me towards the end of the week. Every week I record a 10-minute video. I release them on Sundays. If you like the messages, please like my page, A Dose from Dr. Denise, so that it will show up in your Facebook feed. And if you like this particular message, then share it with others. So when are we operating out of the ego versus the spirit? First, let me say this. The ego is not bad. We are born with an ego. It is what makes us a human doing. Our spirit is what makes us a human being. But, you know, we aren't going to sit on the top of a mountain in a bent leg position, praying and meditating all day long. We're going to be out there in the real world doing things, and that's important. But the problem is that when we get too caught up in our ego, it can really cause us a lot of pain. And so, in this second half of my life, I'll be 50 next month. I really want to operate out of the spirit most of the time. So what are 5 or 6 differences between ego and spirit that came to me this week? The first is that ego is fear-based and spirit is love-based. And so when you catch yourself in fear, and we are in fear so often, just turn the news on, you're in fear. We're in fear when we are feeling in lack of love, a lack of a relationship, lack of money, lack of time. We are in fear of other people hurting us. We're in fear, certainly in this country, with so much of the racism and the divide going on. So when we're operating out of fear, that's our ego. And when we operate out of love, when we just can look at another fellow human being and only see love, when we can love every situation that we come across, even if it is a situation where we have less than we had the day before, but that we don't get fear-based over it, then we're operating out of spirit. And that can be really, really hard to do. And that leads me right into the next point, which is ego sees loss and lack. And therefore, when ego gives, whether it's time or money or energy, we feel that that's not going to come back to us. When we give someone $100, that's out of our checking account. We're never going to see it again. So egoic people, just know that giving is a loss. And spirit-filled people know that when we give, it multiplies and it comes back to us. And logically, that doesn't make sense. If I give someone $100, how does that $100 come back to me? But a spirit-filled person knows that what we put out there in the universe comes back to us exponentially. And that's why the scripture says it's more blessed to give than to receive. A third really key difference between ego and spirit is that ego wants to be right, and spirit wants to be kind. And there's a huge difference. And there's times that we know that we are right in a situation. It's based on facts. Our opinion is correct and right. And yet being right could be hurtful in that situation. So spirit would choose to be kind over right. So whenever you're given the opportunity to be right versus kind, I can promise you that kind will always win. Even though it might cause your ego to have to be diminished, kind will always win, and it will elevate your spirit and will elevate those around you. A fourth and critical point, which really affects me quite a bit, is the concern of what other people think about you. So when you're in ego, you're very, very, very concerned about what other people think of you, and that might change your behavior. And spirit is not that it doesn't care, it's just completely indifferent to it. The spirit doesn't look at other people's opinions because it has no opinion of other people's opinions. In a famous quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, she said that nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I would put the emphasis in that quote on the word feel. Nobody can make you feel. You choose your own feelings, you choose your own thoughts. And so if you get overly concerned about what other people think of you, then it changes and it drives your behavior, and you're operating out of your ego versus your spirit. And your spirit doesn't care because it doesn't even notice it. A fifth point is that your ego will constantly be reviewing the past to bring it into the present to take it in the future. And so, Wayne Dyer would say that 95% of your thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday, and 80% of those thoughts are negative, and therefore we're constantly reinventing our future by basing it on our past. And your spirit doesn't know of the past. Your spirit has absolutely no knowledge of the past because it only operates in the present. And I think we would all agree that it would be so cool if we could. My dog right here is chewing on something and making noise, but I can tell you that my dog doesn't know anything about yesterday because he's only right here, right now in the present moment. Wouldn't it be cool if we could all operate that way so that we don't judge yesterday and bring it in today? And that's why there's books, by Eckhart Tolle on the power of now, and Ram Dass on be here now, because now is where it's at. And so when you're operating out of spirit, you're in the present moment. And that is such a gift to give not only to others, but to yourself, to operate in the present moment. And another key distinction between ego and spirit is ego is a victim. Ego blames other people, and spirit accepts 100% responsibility for where it is, no matter where it is. If it's in a difficult situation, if it's in a challenging situation, if it's in a blissful situation, spirit accepts responsibility for that situation. It says that no matter what, directly or indirectly, I caused the situation. And even if we didn't, even if it was some crazy random event that happened to us, for example, what happened in Pittsburgh, that you go to your synagogue on a Saturday and you lose your life, right? Even if it's a crazy random event, still staying here on planet Earth, we still accept responsibility for this situation, and that allows us to be in control and in charge, if you will, of what our choices are. And so there are 5 or 6 key distinctions between ego and spirit, and I would suggest that you go back and perhaps write those down. Maybe I'll summarize those if I don't run out of time. I'm at 7.5 minutes, so let me just share with you what happened. So there's a park close by. About once a week I go and walk at the park, and it's a half-a-mile loop. It's a really pretty park, and I take my dog, and this past week I went about 9 a.m. There were maybe 4 or 5 other walkers with me at that time. But on my first trip around, I saw a young man sitting on a park bench relatively close to me, and I couldn't tell if he was high, but I do know he was drinking a large beer in a paper bag. And so my first trip around, I was in ego because I was definitely fear-based. I was checking this guy out as I was walking by him. I was looking over my shoulder. I was looking to see who else was close to me in case I had to react, On my second trip around, I looked at him closer and to see what was going on with him. He wasn't looking back at me. He was drinking his beer, minding his business. But on my second trip around, my ego started to go down. The fear started to go down. On my third trip around, I said hello to him, and he looked up. He did not say hello back, but he just looked up at me, and I recognized that this young man was about the age of one of my sons. On my fourth trip around, I said hello again. I said it a little bit louder, and this time he acknowledged me. He looked me in the eye. I don't know if he said hello back, but he definitely recognized that I was trying to make contact with him. On my fifth trip around, because I make 6 trips around, on my 5th trip around, I brought my dog closer to him. I asked him, "Are you afraid of animals?" He said, "I am a little." And I said, "My dog's really, really friendly." And my dog sat right at his knee, and he pet him. And then, guys, on my 6th trip around, I stopped again. I asked him his name. His name was Trey, and I wished him well. I went completely from ego to spirit. Now, did I sit there and write him a check for $500 and tell him to come live with me and take him to the soup kitchen and all that stuff? Nope, this time I didn't. But perhaps I will on the next time. Perhaps God will give me some way that I can help him. But the main way I could help him this time is just operate out of spirit and not of fear. Treat him like a fellow human being. Treat him like my child, because that's what I would want another person to do with my sons. Know that he is a child of God, absolutely, positively no different than me. His path has just been different. And I thought it was a wonderful way, because I knew I wanted to talk about this topic. I thought it was a wonderful way to talk about going from ego to spirit. You're always going to operate a little bit in both. Maybe some days you're 90-10, 90 spirit, 10 ego, which is really a wonderful way to live. Sometimes you might be 90% ego, 10% spirit. That weighs a little bit harder, but not wrong. Just could be a little bit more challenging. So in summary, your ego is fear-based and your spirit is love-based. Your ego wants to hold on to everything, and your spirit wants to give because it knows that giving abundantly will come back. Your ego wants to be right, and your spirit wants to be kind. Your ego really cares about what other people think, and your spirit is completely oblivious to what other people think. Your ego wants to bring the past into the present, and your spirit only operates in the here and now, has no recognition whatsoever of the past because it has no reference point for the past. And then lastly, your ego is victim-based and likes to blame, and your spirit accepts responsibility for everything that shows up and has shown up. So that's this week's dose from Dr. Denise. Have a wonderful week. Share this with others. Peace out, and I'll see you next Sunday.